It was a time when the world was experiencing an explosion of musical talent. The early 1980 seconds saw two of the biggest stars in music at their creative peak: Michael Jackson, the king of pop, and Stevie Wonder, a musical genius who had been dominating the charts for over a decade. Both were household names, each with their own unique sound and style that influenced millions around the globe. However, their paths had never crossed in the studio until one fateful day, when the music world witnessed a collaboration that would forever change the course of music history. At the time, Michael was deeply immersed in the making of his album Thriller, which would later become the best-selling album of all time. He was working tirelessly on perfecting his sound, collaborating with producers and musicians to create the perfect mix of pop, rock, and soul. His creativity was boundless, his energy contagious, and he was determined to make Thriller a record that would not only redefine pop music, but also leave a lasting legacy. Stevie Wonder, on the other hand, was already an established legend. His work as a songwriter, musician, and producer had earned him numerous Grammy Awards, and he had a long history of creating groundbreaking music. His innovative use of synthesizers, combined with his soulful voice and deep understanding of musical theory, made him a one-of-a-kind talent. His albums, such as Songs in the Key of Life, had already set a high bar in the world of R&B and pop music. But despite their parallel successes, Michael and Stevie had never worked together until a random twist of fate brought them together. It all started at a recording studio in Los Angeles. Michael, who was always surrounded by a team of musicians, producers, and collaborators, found himself there on a day when the studio had an unusual opening. It was a rare moment of downtime, a brief window where there were no scheduled sessions. Stevie, who had also been working in the city, was there at the same time, recording his latest project. Though the two artists were no strangers to each other's work, they had never shared a studio space. On this particular day, Stevie happened to walk into the studio just as Michael was finishing up a session. There, amid the sounds of instruments and the hum of the recording equipment, they met for the first time. At first, the meeting was casual, a handshake, a few words of praise for each other's music, and an exchange of smiles. But soon, the conversation turned to the idea of working together. Michael, who admired Stevie's musical brilliance, had always wanted to collaborate with him, and Stevie, who respected Michael's fresh approach to pop music, was open to the idea. The idea of creating something together was exciting for both artists, and before long, they were talking about a potential collaboration. There was, however, a significant challenge. The studio only had a very limited time slot available. They had only 3 hours before the next scheduled session would begin. In most circumstances, this would have been a huge obstacle. 3 hours wasn't enough time to write a song, let alone record one. But for Michael and Stevie, this challenge was something that excited them even more. They were two of the most innovative artists of their time, and the thought of making something incredible in such a short period was an opportunity they couldn't resist. The idea was simple, but the challenge ahead of them was far from easy. With just 3 hours on the clock, they would have to write, compose, and record an entire track. No time for second guesses, no time for endless revisions. It was a do-or-die situation, one where both artists had to trust their instincts, their creativity, and each other. It was a unique moment, one of those rare opportunities in life where everything aligns perfectly for something extraordinary to happen. As the two men settled into the studio, the atmosphere was one of calm excitement. Michael was eager to dive in, his mind buzzing with ideas. He had always been someone who thrived under pressure, someone who was able to harness the energy of the moment and turn it into something magical. Stevie, too, was excited. He was used to working quickly, often experimenting with different sounds and styles in real time. He had a reputation for improvising, which worked perfectly in this situation. Together, they were an unstoppable combination. They didn't waste time on small talk. Instead, They got straight to work. Michael started by playing a few rhythms on a drum machine, tapping into his natural sense of groove. Stevie, who had mastered almost every instrument, started experimenting with the keyboard, adding layers of melody and harmony. As they worked together, they discovered a surprising synergy. Their creative minds clicked instantly, and they quickly built a foundation for a song that was beginning to take shape. There was something about their energy that was electric. Michael's youthful exuberance, combined with Stevie's seasoned expertise, made for an interesting dynamic. They were both at the top of their game, but neither had the ego that might have gotten in the way of collaboration. They were both there to create something special, something that would go beyond their individual successes and become a shared masterpiece. As the hours ticked by, the track slowly started to form. They experimented with different melodies, with Michael singing lines over Stevie's instrumental ideas. It was a back-and-forth process, each one feeding off the other's creativity. At times, they would laugh, realizing how easily the ideas were coming to them. There was no stress, no tension, just two musical minds working together, trusting their instincts and pushing each other to create something great. The clock was constantly in the back of their minds, but instead of adding pressure, it seemed to inspire them to work faster, to think outside the box. The idea of having only 3 hours to complete the track made every moment feel more urgent, more important. And as time went on, both artists became more focused. They weren't just making music, they were creating history. In those 3 hours, they not only wrote a song but created a collaboration that would influence generations of musicians. It was a moment of pure musical magic, a moment that might never have happened had they not been thrown together by fate. Working under pressure, but driven by their shared love of music. By the end of their session, they had a completed track, something that would soon become an anthem for music lovers everywhere. Their collaboration that day wasn't just about writing a song. It was about two legends coming together to push each other, to inspire each other, and to create something that neither could have done alone. And though the time they had was limited, the result was anything but small. What they produced in those 3 hours would go on to change the course of music history. As the hours passed, Michael and Stevie found themselves fully immersed in the creative process. They were no longer thinking about the clock ticking down. They were lost in the music, each idea sparking the next, building upon one another's thoughts. It was as if the studio had become a space where only the music mattered, nothing else. For two legends like them, this was familiar territory, yet the energy between them felt fresh and new, as if the collaboration itself was a new kind of magic. The beauty of this collaboration was how different yet complementary their styles were. Michael was known for his incredible sense of rhythm and melody. His voice was something that could shift from soft whispers to powerful belting in a heartbeat, creating an unmatched dynamic range. His creativity was always in overdrive, constantly coming up with new ideas, trying out different sounds, and pushing boundaries. Stevie, on the other hand, was a master of layers and harmony. His ability to create rich, soulful melodies using a wide range of instruments, particularly his beloved synthesizers, was a gift that had made him one of the most innovative artists in the world. As they sat together in the studio, Michael was the one who started the initial spark. He had a rhythmic idea in his head, a groove that was unmistakably Michael Jackson. He picked up the microphone, humming a few lines to himself, getting into the mood of the song. His movements were natural and fluid, and he seemed to effortlessly glide into the process, his voice blending with the beat he had set in motion. His hands moved in time with the beat, as if conducting the rhythm himself. Stevie, who had already begun playing a few chords on the keyboard, listened carefully. He had a deep understanding of harmony and melody, and it didn't take him long to find a chord progression that perfectly matched Michael's rhythm. He played a series of notes that added a certain depth to the track, a lush background of sound that would later become one of the defining features of the song. Stevie's ability to instantly understand the feel of what Michael was doing, and then to add his own unique touch, was remarkable. They worked seamlessly, neither of them dominating the process, but instead, each one contributing equally to the song's creation. Michael would sing a few lines, and Stevie would immediately respond with a harmonic line or an instrumental flourish that made the track soar to new heights. They were like two puzzle pieces, fitting perfectly together, each enhancing the other's work. There was no competition, just pure collaboration. At times, Michael would take a step back, allowing Stevie to build on an idea, filling in the spaces with his rich, soulful sounds. Stevie, in turn, would often look to Michael for direction, asking him what he thought of a particular sound or asking if he could try something different. This constant exchange of ideas, thoughts, and suggestions made the session feel less like a pressure-filled task and more like an exciting musical adventure. It was almost as if they were speaking a language only the two of them could understand. As the track began to come together, the idea of it being a rush job seemed to fade completely. With every passing minute, the song began to take on a life of its own. The blend of Michael's catchy, infectious rhythm with Stevie's rich layers of melody was something special, something that neither could have created alone. There was a certain energy in the room, something that only happens when two masters of their craft come together with a shared vision. The next step was to decide on the vibe of the song. Michael and Stevie wanted it to be something that felt alive, something that made you want to move, something you could feel deep in your bones. They toyed with the tempo, trying to find the perfect pace that would allow both of their styles to shine. Michael, with his keen sense of groove, suggested a faster beat, one that would make people want to get up and dance. Stevie, ever the perfectionist, added subtle keyboard riffs that gave the song a unique edge, making it sound modern while still rooted in soul and funk. They also began working on the lyrics, a crucial part of the process. Michael's voice was always full of emotion, and he wanted the lyrics to reflect the energy they were creating in the studio. He hummed a few words and, before long, had a few lines written down. They were simple yet powerful words that matched the upbeat, optimistic mood of the track. Stevie, always supportive, added his own input, suggesting ways to make the lines flow better and giving them more depth. The two worked together, refining the lyrics until they felt just right. As the song took shape, the mood in the studio was light and positive. The pressure of the time limit still hung in the air, but it wasn't something that was felt heavily. Instead, it was a challenge that only seemed to fuel their creativity. They fed off of each other's energy, each of them pushing the other to go further, to do better, and to reach deeper into their creativity than they ever had before. At one point, Michael started experimenting with his vocal style. He would sing a phrase in one way, then shift it, making it sound completely different. It was a technique he was known for, always willing to experiment with his voice until he found exactly the sound he wanted. Stevie watched in admiration as Michael used his voice like an instrument, shaping it with precision. The vocal arrangement started to evolve, with Michael layering different harmonies, his voice rising and falling with the rhythm. The combination of his vocals and Stevie's instrumental work created a sound that was full of life, full of energy, and full of soul. The song was beginning to come together in a way that neither Michael nor Stevie had expected. In just a short time, they had managed to create something that felt truly special. They were no longer just writing a song. They were crafting a masterpiece. Even in the brief moments when they took a pause to listen back to what they had done, there was a sense of excitement in the air. They both knew they were onto something big. Throughout the process, their respect for each other only grew. They were both musical geniuses, but they each had their own way of working, their own approach to creativity. Yet, it was this very difference that made the collaboration so successful. Michael's infectious enthusiasm for rhythm combined perfectly with Stevie's deep understanding of melody and harmony. Together, they had managed to fuse two completely different styles of music into one powerful, unforgettable track. By the time the 3-hour mark was approaching, the song was almost complete. They had worked tirelessly, but the result was something neither could have achieved alone. The final piece was coming together. and both Michael and Stevie could sense that they had created something that was going to change music forever. The process, though rushed, had been one of the most fulfilling experiences of their careers. It was proof that sometimes, when the pressure is on, true creativity can flourish. As the minutes ticked away, the studio began to fill with a palpable sense of excitement. The song was almost complete, but both Michael and Stevie knew that they were missing something. They had experimented with the rhythm, the melody, the harmonies, and yet there was still a feeling that something magical had to happen for the track to truly come alive. Despite their successes up to this point, they were both perfectionists, always pushing themselves and each other to go beyond what they had already achieved. It was in these final moments that something extraordinary occurred, a moment of true musical magic that neither of them could have predicted. The pressure of the 3-hour deadline, the ticking clock in the background, and the energy they had poured into the song all seemed to come together in a single, unforgettable moment of inspiration. It happened when Michael, having stepped away from the microphone for a brief moment to listen to the track, suddenly had an idea. He had been so deeply involved in the creation of the song that he had almost forgotten what it was like to just listen to it. When he did, he felt it a sudden realization that the song needed more than just the right rhythm, the right melody, or the right lyrics. It needed something else, something that would elevate it to another level. He turned to Stevie and said, "I think it's missing a certain kind of energy, a spark, something that makes it unforgettable." Stevie, who had been quietly adding subtle keyboard flourishes, paused for a moment. He always had a unique way of approaching music. He was never afraid to take risks or experiment with new ideas. He listened intently to the track, feeling its pulse, and after a few seconds, his fingers moved back to the synthesizer. He began to play a few light, syncopated keyboard notes, simple at first, but with a certain warmth and groove that was immediately captivating. Michael's eyes lit up. That was it. The song needed that extra layer of complexity, that spark of excitement, and Stevie's touch on the synthesizer was just what it needed. They had already created a solid foundation, but this final addition would bring it all together, transforming the track from something good into something legendary. The moment was magical, not because it was an accident, but because both artists knew exactly what needed to happen. They were in tune with each other in a way that only two true musicians can be, and in that instance, everything seemed to click perfectly into place. The sound that emerged from Stevie's synthesizer, combined with Michael's infectious rhythm and powerful vocals, felt like pure electricity. It was as if the song suddenly came to life, with each note and beat standing out with clarity and purpose. Michael immediately returned to the microphone, singing with renewed energy and confidence. He sang the lines in a way that was almost different from before, more alive, more filled with excitement, as if the track had inspired him to push his voice even further. His performance became more dynamic, the lyrics gaining an intensity that hadn't been there before. The energy in the room grew palpable, as if the song itself had taken on a life of its own, pushing both of them to their creative limits. Stevie, too, was fully immersed in the moment. His hands moved effortlessly across the keyboard, his fingers adding subtle nuances to the track. The way he played, shifting between smooth chords and fast runs, was like he was having a conversation with the song, adding depth and richness that took it to new heights. The combination of Michael's voice and Stevie's instrumentation was something truly unique. There was no doubt that this was not just another song, but something that would resonate deeply with listeners for years to come. The magic of that moment wasn't just about the music itself, it was about the connection between Michael and Stevie. They weren't just two famous artists working together. They were two creative forces coming together to push each other beyond their limits, to create something that neither could have made on their own. The bond they shared in that moment was clear. They both understood the power of music and how it could bring people together, how it could make the world feel smaller, more connected, and more alive. As the song began to take shape, both artists seemed to forget about the limited time they had. The clock was still ticking, But it no longer mattered. They were caught up in the process, lost in the magic they were creating. Their focus had shifted from finishing in time to making sure the track was everything it could be. Every detail seemed important, and every note felt like it had a purpose. The excitement was building, and neither could wait to hear the finished product. The final step was to add the finishing touches, layering the vocals, adding the final instrumental lines, and ensuring everything fit together perfectly. There was a sense of urgency in the air. But it was the kind of urgency that came from a deep passion for what they were doing, not from the fear of running out of time. It was clear to both Michael and Stevie that they were about to create something monumental. As the last lines of the song were recorded, there was a feeling of satisfaction, of relief. It was done. And as they listened back to the track for the first time in its entirety, both artists could feel it. The magic, the spark that had turned a simple idea into something revolutionary. The song had transformed from a mere concept into an iconic masterpiece. One that would go on to define a moment in music history. For both Michael and Stevie, this was not just another recording session. It was a defining moment in their careers, a moment when they had come together to create something that transcended their individual talents. It was proof that when two musical legends unite, the result can be something far greater than what either could achieve alone. As the track played through the speakers, there was a moment of silence between the two of them. Neither of them spoke immediately, both listening intently to the final result. It was almost as if they were taking in the magnitude of what they had just accomplished, as if both understood that this song was going to change the course of music forever. Finally, Michael turned to Stevie with a smile and said, "We did it. This is something special." Stevie, with his characteristic humility, nodded and smiled in return. "Yeah, this is magic." In that moment, both of them knew they had created something that would resonate with generations of listeners. It was a song that would be played for decades, a track that would bring joy, inspire creativity, and unite people through the power of music. What had started as a brief 3-hour window in a Los Angeles studio had turned into a musical moment for the ages. A moment that would echo through the annals of music history. As the final seconds of their 3-hour deadline approached, Michael and Stevie were still full of energy, excitement, and an undeniable sense of purpose. The track they had just created together had evolved into something far more powerful than either of them had expected. It was a fusion of pop, soul, and funk that felt both timeless and fresh. The mood in the studio was a mixture of satisfaction and eager anticipation, as both artists knew they had just created something unique, something that would change the course of music history. Even though the song was nearly complete, there was still one critical part of the process left: the recording. In the studio, the recording session would be the moment when everything they had worked for would be captured. It was the moment they would listen back to what they had created and decide whether it was everything they hoped it would be. Both Michael and Stevie were no strangers to the recording process they had. Each recorded countless songs, but this one felt different. There was a special energy in the air, something that made this track feel alive, something that could only come from a collaboration between two musical icons. The studio was alive with the sounds of instruments, the low hum of the recording equipment, and the occasional laughter as they worked. The technical staff, who had been quietly observing the entire process, could hardly believe what they were witnessing. To see two of the greatest musical talents of all time in one room, working together so effortlessly, was a rare and beautiful thing. There was a sense of reverence in the air, as everyone in the room knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. As the recording session began, Michael and Stevie took their positions, ready to lay down the final version of the track. Michael stepped up to the microphone, his energy and enthusiasm still flowing freely. He was a perfectionist when it came to his vocal performance, and today was no different. He wanted to make sure that every word he sang, every note he hit, conveyed the emotion and excitement that he felt. The song was a reflection of his own energy, and he wanted that to come through clearly. Stevie, with his deep understanding of music, positioned himself at his keyboard, fingers already ready to add his signature style to the track. His calm and focused demeanor contrasted with Michael's more spontaneous and energetic approach. But together, they were a perfect match. Stevie's touch on the keyboard brought a sense of soul to the song, adding layers of depth that gave the track its warmth. The balance between Michael's powerful vocals and Stevie's melodic touch was beginning to shine through. The first take was a thrill for both of them. As Michael sang the opening lines, his voice felt smooth and confident, yet filled with the energy of someone who had just discovered something new. He hit every note perfectly, but it wasn't just about technical accuracy, it was about the emotion behind the voice. You could feel the joy, the excitement, the passion he had for the music. It wasn't just a performance. It was a celebration of everything they had created in the past 3 hours. Stevie's contributions were just as powerful. His keyboard played off Michael's vocals, complementing the rhythm with a subtle but unmistakable groove. The way Stevie weaved his music around Michael's voice was like a conversation, each note responding to the other, creating a harmonious blend of sound. It was a delicate dance between two artists, each pushing the other to be better, to reach deeper into their creativity. After the first take, they paused to listen to the playback. There was a sense of excitement in the room as the track filled the speakers. Both Michael and Stevie were satisfied with what they had heard, but they knew that a great track could always be made even better. They went through several more takes, each time tweaking a little here and adjusting a little there. They weren't trying to change everything, just adding the final touches, making sure that every part of the song sounded perfect. It was clear that they weren't going to rush this process. Even though time was running out, the track needed to be exactly what they had imagined. As they continued working, Michael's creativity took center stage. He began experimenting with his voice, trying out different styles of singing, playing with harmonies, and even adding a few background vocals. His vocal range was remarkable. He could seamlessly shift from a soft, breathy tone to a powerful belt in the blink of an eye. Each time he approached the microphone, he brought something new to the table. Whether it was a slight change in melody or a new harmony, Michael was constantly pushing the song to new heights. Stevie, ever the perfectionist, worked his magic on the instrumental parts of the song. He added subtle touches here and there, little keyboard riffs, delicate chords, and intricate synthesizer lines that gave the track its signature sound. It wasn't about making the song louder or more complex. It was about adding layers of texture that made the song feel rich and full. Stevie's attention to detail was evident in every note he played. Even the smallest change in the arrangement brought something new and exciting to the track. It was in these final moments of the recording session that the full magic of their collaboration became clear. They were no longer two separate artists working on their own parts. They were a single musical entity, with each of their strengths shining through in the final product. It was a perfect balance between Michael's pop sensibilities and Stevie's soulful complexity. Together, they had created something that felt fresh and exciting, yet timeless at the same time. As the last take was finished and they listened to the final mix, there was a moment of silence in the room. Both Michael and Stevie sat back, listening intently to the track that had been created in just a few short hours. The song was everything they had hoped for. It was energetic, vibrant, and full of life. It was a song that would resonate with people from all walks of life, from all corners of the world. It was a song that would transcend genres and generations, becoming a timeless classic. The final version was exactly what they had dreamed of. A powerful combination of infectious rhythm, soulful melody, and powerful lyrics. The song had become a reflection of their own creativity, a representation of the magic that happens when two musical legends come together. After they finished listening, Michael turned to Stevie with a huge smile. "We did it. This is something special." Stevie nodded, his face reflecting a quiet sense of pride. "Yeah, we really did. This is magic." Both of them knew that this track was something more than just another recording. It was the product of two minds coming together to create something unique. It was a moment in music history, a moment that would change the world forever. As they left the studio that day, they knew they had accomplished something rare. In just 3 hours, they had crafted a song that would echo through the halls of music history. A song that would inspire generations of musicians. A song that would bring joy to millions of people all around the world. Once the final recording was complete, Michael and Stevie found themselves looking at each other in quiet awe. The song they had just created together wasn't just a product of their collaboration, it was something special. Something that felt alive with energy and excitement. It was a perfect blend of their unique musical styles, a track that showcased their creativity and the magic that happens when two musical legends come together. But what neither of them could have known in that moment was just how much of an impact this song would have on the world. As the track was finalized and prepared for release, both Michael and Stevie had no idea how monumental the song would become. They knew they had created something unique, but they could never have predicted that it would go on to become an anthem. A song that would be played for generations, transcending cultural and musical boundaries. The impact of the song wasn't just felt in the music industry, it reached deep into the hearts of millions of fans around the world. When it was released, it quickly climbed the charts, becoming a massive hit. It wasn't just popular because of the artists involved. It resonated with people on a much deeper level. The song carried a message of joy, unity, and celebration. And it was a reflection of the times, a moment when the world was ready for something that could bring people together through the power of music. Radio stations played it constantly, and it was quickly added to playlists everywhere. The infectious rhythm, the soulful melody, and the unforgettable lyrics made it a song that people could not get enough of. But beyond its catchy tune and memorable chorus, the song became a symbol of what was possible when two musical legends worked together, pushing each other to create something extraordinary. The impact didn't stop with just the listeners. Musicians from all over the world were inspired by the song. It pushed the boundaries of what pop music could be, blending genres in a way that had never been done before. Artists from different backgrounds looked at the track and saw it as a blueprint for how to create music that was not only accessible, but also innovative. The collaboration between Michael and Stevie was a testament to the power of pushing the limits of creativity and combining musical styles in ways that hadn't been imagined before. The song was also a defining moment for both Michael and Stevie in their respective careers. For Michael, it was another stepping stone in his journey to becoming the king of pop. His ability to merge pop, rock, and soul had already set him apart, but this collaboration elevated him to a new level. It wasn't just about the music, it was about his willingness to work with other artists, to learn, and to push himself beyond what was expected. Michael was always about more than just entertainment. He wanted to create a lasting impact, and this song helped cement that legacy. For Stevie, the collaboration was a testament to his own genius. He had been in the music industry for years, creating groundbreaking albums and songs. But this track showed the world that he could still surprise people, still create magic, with a fresh approach. It wasn't just about his technical skill, it was about his ability to inspire others with his music, to bring out the best in the artists he worked with, and to create music that spoke to the heart. As the years went by, the song remained timeless. It was one of those rare tracks that didn't lose its power, no matter how much time passed. It continued to be played at parties, weddings, and celebrations. It became a soundtrack to people's lives, a song that they could listen to again and again without ever getting tired of it. It was a song that brought people together, regardless of where they were from, what language they spoke, or what kind of music they normally listened to. It crossed cultural boundaries, bringing joy to people from all walks of life. The legacy of that 3-hour studio session between Michael and Stevie went far beyond the song itself. Their collaboration became a symbol of what could happen when two artists come together to create something truly unique. It proved that music had the power to transcend individual egos and bring people together to make something greater than the sum of its parts. They showed the world that when two legends, each with their own style and vision, worked together, the result could be something that changed the world. The song also paved the way for future collaborations. In the years that followed, artists from different genres and backgrounds began to see the value in working together, not just for commercial success but for the creative potential it offered. Michael and Stevie's partnership set a precedent for how collaborations could break boundaries and open up new possibilities in music. It wasn't just about merging styles. It was about taking risks, experimenting, and pushing each other to create something that would stand the test of time. As both Michael and Stevie continued with their careers, they each carried the memory of that moment in the studio. They knew that their collaboration had created something that would live on far beyond their own time. It wasn't just the song itself, but the way it symbolized the power of creative unity. It reminded both of them that when you open yourself up to new ideas and new possibilities, you can achieve greatness. The song's legacy also lived on through the countless covers and tributes made by other artists. Over the years, countless musicians have paid homage to the track in their own way, adding their personal touch while honoring the original. Whether it was a live performance or a reimagined version, the song had become an essential part of the musical landscape. It had influenced not just the generation that first heard it, but every generation that followed. Fans continued to embrace the song as part of their lives. It was played at events, during special occasions, and became a symbol of celebration. Every time the track played, people remembered the magic that was created in that studio all those years ago. It wasn't just about the song, it was about the moment when two musical geniuses, Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder, came together to create something that would outlast them both. For Michael, whose career would continue to break records, and for Stevie, whose influence would continue to be felt across genres, this collaboration remained one of their most cherished accomplishments. It was a reminder of what could happen when two people, with different styles and backgrounds, came together to create something that resonated with people all over the world. And so, the song lived on. It remained a symbol of unity, of what could be achieved when people worked together for a greater purpose. It was a lasting testament to the power of music to bring joy, inspire creativity, and connect people across time and space.